Hello and welcome to Microsoft Build, and specifically to this session here where we're going to talk about creating friction-free code across all tools and frameworks. We're really excited to have you here for this session, but first let's introduce the presenters for this session. So first of all, Carole, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, excited to be virtually at Build. And I'm Carole Logan. I'm a principal engineer working on the .NET stack based in Glasgow.
Awesome, great stuff. And Chris, welcome to the session. Chris, how about yourself?
Thanks, Dean. So Chris Reddington, Cloud Solution Architect here at Microsoft, work particularly in the app dev space, working with our customers in the manufacturing and resources industries. So excited to be here at Build.
Awesome. And myself, I'm Dean Bryen. I'm a principal cloud advocate focusing on security here at Microsoft. I also run a community here in London, the Cloud Security London community. But today we're here to talk about friction-free code. And what really does that mean to you as developers? Well, if you watch Satya's keynote, he mentioned developer velocity, and if you watch the keynote and the segments from Amanda and Donovan, etc., we spoke about how companies that realize that enabling their engineers makes them the most successful on Azure enables them to move much faster. For those that haven't seen those segments or those keynotes, it spoke about how McKinsey have done some great research recently about developer velocity and how by developers moving faster and with less friction, this helps companies stay one step ahead and innovate faster. Developer velocity is all about building productively, collaborating globally and securely, and scaling our innovation. So in this particular session, we want to build on that as developers, talking to you as developers, dive a little bit deeper with a super demo heavy session. This is probably the last slide that you're going to see today, and show you how as engineers you can code on Azure and GitHub as friction-free as possible and focus on writing code and features for your apps and let the platform take care of the heavy lifting for you. So let's dive straight into the demo. So over to you, Carole, to kick us off.
Thank you. I'll just try and share the right screen here. Hopefully y'all will see my browser anytime soon. And what we're going to do is, for my demo, we're going to work in code spaces, and I thought I'd give a little bit of an introduction to code spaces to start with. And we are using GitHub code spaces, and as it says here, it's your instant dev environment. And what they mean by that is you can work in the browser with the GitHub repo that you're working on, and you can use all the tools that you know and love. And we'll jump in a second and you'll see, but it's basically Visual Studio Code in the browser, and you'll recognize it straight away. And you can simplify your workflow automatically. You can set up all your dependencies and SSH keys, and you can essentially commit faster on any project you're working on. And really important for devs is we've all got the extensions that we use that make us more productive and increase that developer velocity. So you can use all of those within code spaces. And a really important one here is you can develop from anywhere, anytime, on any device. So you don't have to be at your dev machine, or if something happens to your dev machine and you need to use another, you can straight away get up and running on code spaces with your code base. And a really big part of that for me is being able to contribute to projects without having to complicate your local setup. You don't need to worry about different versions of Node or anything like that. Even if you've not worked on the solution before, you can spin it up in code spaces and collaborate with your teammates and get up to speed really quickly on the code base. So if you are interested in code spaces, and we will have a little bit of a look, you can request early access to the beta there and have a play around. But here's the repo that we're going to work on. So it's UK community repo, and I've got access to this one that Chris has set up. So what I'm going to do is, you'll probably recognize this green button from GitHub, but this option here appears if you have access to code spaces. So if I go open code space, it will say I don't have one at the moment for this branch on this repo. So I'll say open new code space. And what you'll see is it will spin up essentially a version of VS Code in the cloud for me, and you'll recognize this interface, I'm sure, once it opens. And what we're going to do is we're going to, so the repo literally has a README for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get up and running with a .NET Blazor app. within Codespaces. So you'll see here it's got our repo open and it's got our README, and that's all that's in here. So what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm actually going to create a new branch for my work, and I'll call it. You'll see down here in the corner, we're now working from our build demo branch. So here in the terminal, we can do anything that we can do on our own machines if we were using Visual Studio Code, or even in the kind of command line there. So because I'm going to create a new Blazor app, and don't worry if you don't know too much about Blazor, we're not really going to go into the details for now, but we'll post a link in the chat if you are interested in learning more. And I guess speaking of UK community, I'm giving a talk at .NET Liverpool tomorrow about getting started with Blazor, so if you're interested, do come along. So what I can do there, just like I can on my own machine, is I can say .NET New, Blazor WebAssembly, but then I can do -H if I want to know what the different parameters are. We can get all of these same tools that we can get on our dev machines right here within Codespaces. So I can remind myself of all the different parameters that I can pass in there. And then I'll say .NET New, Blazor WebAssembly. And I'm going to give it the name Build Demo. What this will do is it will create a new Blazor WebAssembly app from the templates that exist. If you've had a look at Blazor WebAssembly, you'll start to recognise the folder structure that appears here on the left-hand side. And what I'll do is I will change directories there. This is zoomed in enough. Let me zoom in a wee bit more. And I want to go to Build Demo. And now that we're in our build, still not got it right. Now we're in our build demo folder. And what I can do in here is I can do .NET watch run. And what .NET watch run does is it actually builds your code and it runs it, but it keeps a watch open. And it means if we make any changes, it actually kind of builds it again on the fly. And what it will do here, because we're in Codespaces, just like on our own machines when we're working, we can open it on a local port. We can do that in the browser using Codespaces. It spins it up on a port for us. We don't have to have it running locally to be able to work or use our dev version. Of course that happened. Let's try reloading it. Oh, it's just taking a little second. No. Strange. I might just try again. I'll open it in Codespaces. Great, so let's try this again. Dina, Chris, are you aware of anything that I've done wrong in the background there?
So it looks like at the bottom of your screen there, you haven't got the port forwarding opening. So if you just mouse down at the very bottom of your code space, there you go. You can see the kind of radio mast looking signal there with a 5 next to it.
Ah, fab.
That's it. Just check on that. And it looks like you've got a few instances running there, so you might need to go and just address those.
Just delete those?
Yep. And then if you cancel that command and run again in the terminal,
yeah, fab.
Just to reset it all.
Don't know why it's not stopping here, sorry. Let me try that again. Why does it never happen in demos, eh? Let's try now. Wonderful, it's going to load this time. So this is what a .NET New Blazor app will look like once it loads. And usually it happens first time. Wonderful. So this is what a Blazor app looks like when you get started. And usually it's as easy as .NET New Blazor app and then .NET Watch Run. So there we are now. So now that we've got that up and running, we can go into our pages and we can see just how easily we can make changes here within code spaces. I can say hello build. We're super excited to be here, and you'll see down at the bottom it's reloaded our app there. And if I go back to this window that's in, if I refresh that, it should load and say hello build. And you can see how quickly I was able there to make changes. It rebuilt it for me. I didn't have to worry about that, and quickly just refresh the browser, and you can see our changes there. So you can see, of course, that's not a real type of change we would be making. You can see how quickly we can really get started here in development. So if I go here, you'll see I've done created a new solution. So I've got lots to commit here. So if I say really useful commit message, I'm sure you'll all agree. If I make that change, and I can actually go here and to our little GitHub pull request section, and I can raise a pull request in here, and it will automatically populate with my branch. So build demo into the main, and I'm going to create a pull request there. And what that will do, I'll need to publish my branch first. And I'm going to create the pull request. And what that should do is hand over to Chris with a pull request sitting in the repo that he's the owner of. So Chris, I'll let you take over, and you can review my pull request.
Excellent, thank you, Carole. So at this point, hopefully everyone should be able to see the GitHub repository at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, refresh that, and we can now see that we've got Carole's pull request there in the repository. At the top of the screen, we've got pull requests 1. So I'm going to go ahead, take a look at that, and I can see we've got demo changes. And of course, we've actually been reviewing this live together at build. So rather than go and take a look through all those file changes there, I'm just going to go ahead and merge that pull request because I trust everything that has been done there. It looks great to me. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to go ahead and sync down the changes to my local Git repository on my machine here. So not using GitHub code spaces at this point, just using Visual Studio Code as we're used to on my local machine. So what we'll see is we've got Carole's changes here. They're now in our main branch because we, of course, merged those changes as well. And everything's there just as we expected it. No problems at all there. So at this point, that's great. We've got the application, but we know that we like to follow good CI, continuous integration, or CD, continuous deployment or delivery principles. So let's go ahead and do that in Azure. So what we're going to do here is we're going to switch over to the Azure portal. And what you can see here is I've got nothing set up at the moment, but we'll go ahead and create a static web app. So Azure Static Web Apps are a new resource which has been generally available for the last couple of weeks or so here. And it's a way to make it really simple and easy to go and deploy your static web applications into Azure. So we're going to do a few things here. We're first going to go ahead and create a new resource group. So we're just going to call this Community Site Resource Group. And we're going to give it a name here. And again, really creatively, we're going to call this community site. I'm a developer. I don't work in marketing and name things. I'm not very good on that side. But then we've got a couple of options here. We've got either a free type or a standard type. And given this is going to be a bit of a pet project, for the time being, we'll go ahead and click the free tier. But if we needed something more production ready, we could go and click the standard tier. We'll go and host that in Europe. And what you can see now on this screen is I have an option to go ahead and choose either GitHub or other. So at this point, Azure is forcing me to go ahead and follow recommended practices using continuous integration, continuous delivery, because I can't deploy to that static web app unless I'm selecting some kind of deployment mechanism. Now, the other option at the moment listed would be Azure Devops, and you can see there we have selected GitHub. And because we've been using GitHub, we're just going to go ahead, we're going to sign into that here. And I'm just going to go ahead, continue, and we can see we've given the appropriate authorization to the UK community organization, which is what we're working in here. So we'll go ahead, authorize that. And what you'll see now is this integration between GitHub and Azure, that we can now go and see the organization and all of those repositories that we've been working in here. We can go and select the main branch, for example, and then we can go and select the build presets. So as a reminder, static web apps, there are different types that you could go and use. There's static site generators, there's various frameworks, and we happen to be using Blazor for this example here. Now, if you've got any questions about static site generators or code spaces or GitHub or anything we're talking about, the Q&A is open, so feel free to fire your questions over to us as well. And we've got a team of all of us who are ready and waiting to answer those questions. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to select Blazor. And now we'll just remove the API location because we're not deploying any APIs there. And I'm just going to double check. We are in our build demo folder. So we're just going to go ahead and change the client location there. And once we go ahead, click Review and create that resource there. That is it. That is everything we had to do to go and kickstart a CI/CD process, get that set up, get the resource created in Azure quickly and easily. So if we just navigate back to Visual Studio Code, we'll see in a moment that there'll be a little pop-up here. And you'll notice now we have this .github folder with this workflows folder as well. And this is the YAML folder, the YAML file, I should say, containing all of our CI and CD for that process that we just set up there to that resource. So again, very easily and effortlessly able to go and deploy to that static web app. So that's going to be happening in the background here. So now that we've gone ahead and made those changes, let's go ahead and adjust the app because we're doing some development at this point. So let's do a couple of things. Let's go ahead and change our web page here. We're going to go and add some useful information. Because this is a session all about communities, we want to go ahead and add some community information. So we'll go ahead and add that snippet in there. Maybe we'll go ahead and make that a different heading size there. For example, there we go. And you can see we've got a few different communities listed. So Azure Thames Valley, Cloud Security London, and Glasgow and Bracco, Ladies of Code Glasgow, and Scottish Developers, which are all meetup groups that Dean, Carole, and myself are organisers for here. Now, we've also got a link to a number of other meetup groups in the UK as well, which will be on that page, and we'll make sure we share the links out to those as well. Now, because I'm a hardcore developer, I'm also going to look into my dependencies. And I'm thinking, look, we've got 5.05 of these versions. Actually, I don't trust those. I'm going to go ahead back to 5.00 here. And you know what? Just for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and add an extra dependency in along the way as well, because I know my code best and I want to go ahead and add those dependencies in. So they all look really good to me, those changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to a new branch. I'm going to call this Chris Changes for the time being. Again, a really inventive branch name there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to click Add, and we're going to say Adjust Dependencies and Page Content. There we go. We'll go ahead. We will commit those changes. going to sign my commit because I'm working on my local machine where I have my security keys signing my commits as well. And now we'll go ahead and publish that branch to GitHub. So if we just switch back to GitHub here, we can now see that there is a new change which has been made here. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new pull request ready to be reviewed here. So with that, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to hand over to Dean, who's going to take a look at that pull request and additionally some security pieces that we need to consider for our application as well. Dean, over to you.
Cheers, Chris. Thank you. I am just going to share my screen, which is this one. So you can see my view of the world here. So Carole and Chris have already been collaborating with us here on this particular project. And I want to talk a little bit around security. Of course, as engineers and developers, security is always something that some may argue causes friction. It doesn't normally come up in the friction-free conversation. And you've already seen how you can use a secure development environment in code spaces to collaborate on your projects. But I want to talk about how we can do security with a light touch from us as engineers and developers. So right here in GitHub, if you go over to the security tab in our repository, you can see that we have a number of security options here. So we can set up a security policy, which tells users how they can report security vulnerabilities for our code to us. We can then disclose and advise security advisories for this repository out to our customers that are leveraging our code or our service in GitHub. But what I want to talk about today is Dependerbot, and Dependerbot is a service provided in GitHub, which enables us to check our dependencies in our code for vulnerabilities and potential security flaws. So you can see here in the browser that we have these Dependable Alerts section here. So in this repository, it's as simple as just going enable Dependable Alerts. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to enable alerts so that I know when there are vulnerable dependencies. And I'm also going to enable security updates. Security updates is something that's a pretty cool feature, which we're going to see more of in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that. Now, before I go ahead, I'm going to give that a second to scan the environment. I want to go back and look at that pull request that was raised by Chris there. He adjusted some dependencies and some content. This is currently in progress. So as soon as he's raised that pull request, it's automatically go ahead and pushing changes to that branch, and you can see that it's actually running our CI process again here, and it's going to Azure Static Web Apps. We can look at the details here and see what's going on. So it's at the build and deploy stage. Looks like it's just finished. Look at that for timing. So what's interesting around that is that if we go back to the conversation here, you can see that actually what it's done in Azure Static Web Apps is it's created a staging environment of our app. So we can go to this link here and it will go ahead and open. We can go and launch that application in a staging environment. If we let that, oh, an error has occurred.
So maybe I'm not as good as a developer as I thought.
Maybe it's not as good a developer as you want, but the point here is that you can, we can go to our Azure portal here, and we can look at that static web app that Chris created, and we can refresh the environment, and you can see that we've got our main branch here, which we can browse to, but we can also see our the pull request here. So it shows you here in staging open pull request. So this is really cool. So that showed us now that that build has been successful and we've deployed to static web app. When we actually browse to it, it doesn't work. I guess Chris missed the step that Carole did of using port forwarding to run it locally or test it in code spaces. But the point there is that this shows every pull request automatically deploys that to Azure Static Web App, so we can come here and check that it actually all works before we go and merge that pull request. Now, that isn't extremely relevant whether it works or not right now to my to the rest of the demo. So I'm going to merge the pull request here anyway, because we're adhering to all the best practices here today, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm the merge of that pull request there. That has been successfully merged and closed. Now, I spoke about Dependerbot from a security vulnerability perspective, and you saw that we just enabled that. But I also want to talk about Dependerbot from a version update perspective. So Dependerbot not only checks for security updates and vulnerabilities in our dependencies, it will also tell us if something is old and we need to update it. So we can go over to the insight section here, and we can look at the dependency graph. Now, the dependency graph is going to show us all of our dependencies here. And in fact, it's giving the game away for our demo because you can see some security vulnerabilities already being highlighted here by Dependerbot from that pull request that Chris just raised. But if I click on the Dependerbot tab here, we can also go and do version updates. Now, it's not as simple as just turning it on to do version updates. What we need to do here is we need to create a config file, a YAML file that tells it which package manifest we're interested in looking for and where our packages and our dependencies lie. So I can just click create config file. And here I'm using the browser to edit. We've seen somebody editing, Carole editing in code spaces. We've seen Chris editing locally in Visual Studio Code. And now I'm editing directly here in the browser. So this is going to create a Dependerbot.yaml file in my .github repo. I'm going to tell it that the directory is build demo. And the package ecosystem that we care about is Blazor. So we're going to talk about NuGet. So I can go ahead and create a new branch. We'll call that Dean Dependerbot propose new file. Instantly create the pull request. And then what I'll do is I'll just go and merge that pull request. So what that's going to now do is give us a Dependerbot.yaml file, which means that we're now not only looking for security vulnerabilities of our Dependerbot updates, but we're also looking for version updates in our dependencies as well. So let's track back a little bit and go back to those security Dependerbot stuff that we enabled. If you remember, we went here and we enabled Dependable Alerts. Well, now we can go and view those Dependable Alerts. So by simply just turning this on, we've already been highlighted that the .NET the systemnet HTTP dependency that Chris introduced is vulnerable. So if we click into that, we can actually see some remediation steps, how we should put a new version in. We should upgrade to version 4.3.4. It also tells us the CVEs and the vulnerabilities which are relevant to that particular package. So there's some high severity, some moderate severity. So in a real world scenario, we'll be able to evaluate the risk here. But what's really cool about this is, and remember I enabled Dependable Alerts, but I also enabled Dependerbot security updates. It's actually raised a pull request here for me right now. So this has actually raised a pull request, an automated pull request to fix this security vulnerability and bump that version up from 4.3.1 to 4.3.4. This makes it really easy. We talk about friction-free code. We've just literally turned that on and automatically we're getting pull requests raised to make our application more secure. So really low friction for us to do that. I'm going to go ahead and merge this pull request as well. So we go and update and we're a little bit more secure with our versions of our dependencies. But if you see on this little icon here, we've now got 3 pull requests raised. So where did they come from? Well, we just set up the Dependerbot.yaml file for version updates. So although these ASP.NET Core WebAssembly packages aren't necessarily vulnerable, it hasn't highlighted any security vulnerabilities. It has highlighted that they're an old version and a newer compatible version is available. So it will automatically go and check for version updates and then raise a pull request to let us know that we should upgrade from 5.0.0, which you saw Chris downgrade to, up to 5.0.6. So this makes it really nice for us as well just from a version update perspective. GitHub has a number of other security features as well, which we can't go through and talk about today, but one that you should I definitely encourage you to check out is the code scanning with CodeQL. We can run that as a GitHub action as part of our CI process to scan our code, doing static analysis of our application code as well. Any questions about any of those, of course, throw them in the chat and the Q&A. So looking at this now and kind of summarizing back what we spoke about in this session, we've looked at building friction-free code and how you can understand Azure and GitHub to increase your developer velocity and hopefully reduce the friction when you're developing for your particular business or your services and your job and your side projects, whatever it is you're building. Hopefully you can do that with less friction and using better developer tools. There's a few links and resources there on the screen for you that you can check out. We've got to follow up all the links today. You can go straight to that repo and check out that Blazor app there as well. And there's some great resources on Microsoft Learn. Carole speaking at .NET Liverpool tomorrow about getting started with Blazor, so you should definitely check that out. And I just wanted to invite Chris and Carole back to the session to kind of share some of the communities that we're working on. We mentioned them earlier, but Chris, the communities that you're involved in, just if people are interested.
Yeah, sure. So Azure Thames Valley, so down in the south of England here. And actually talking about communities, I should give a shout out because last night I was speaking at DevOps Knots about GitHub code spaces and the like as well. So there's plenty of communities across the UK. And I think the thing that I would say as an organizer, I'm sure you folks will agree as well, is we always need speakers. We always need people who can come along and support the communities because, you know, it's all about us helping each other, right? So that would be my request to everyone, I think, here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, always looking for speakers. And Carole, a number of communities that you run. Why not share that with the group?
Yeah, I help run a few meetups here, opposite end of the country, I guess. So up here in Glasgow, we've got Ladies of Code Glasgow. We've been going for like 5 years or so, and it's what it sounds like, a bunch of ladies that code, sharing information about coding and working in tech. We've got Umbraco Glasgow, which is Umbraco's a .NET based CMS, so we have talks from anything from Umbraco to .NET to front end, anything that people want to talk about, and then Scottish Developers, which is, as it sounds, a bit more broad, just development in Scotland, all different tech parts of the tech stack, and they've all been virtually meeting up for a year or so, which, although it's sad we can't see people in real life, it means that people can join us from all around the world. They don't need to be in Glasgow, they don't need to be in Scotland, so it's actually been really nice to be able to welcome folks from all around the UK and from all around the world really to our meetups.
Awesome. Yeah, can't wait to get back to Scotland in person, but virtual works for now. So yeah, and likewise, I run a meetup here in London, Cloud Security London. We talk about all things cloud security. Check us out on Meetup. We're virtual as well. We did one event in person and then it all went virtual, and the pandemic happened. So hopefully we'll be back together soon. But likewise, been able to spread with the wider community and the rest of the world, which has been pretty nice. So yeah, so that's it. The resources are there and available. If people have any questions, please feel free to fire them into the Q&A in the chat. We're around for the next few minutes to answer them if you wish. So fire them into the Q&A and we'll answer them here live on air for you as well. Sure, what's coming in? Oh, there's a few links. All right, there's a question that's come in here. It says, what's the difference between Blazor WebAssembly app with ASP.NET Core hosted and Blazor server app? And that's not a question for me, for sure.
I've posted, well, Adam posted it on my behalf actually on the chat, and there's a really good link that explains it well. We will go into it tomorrow at .NET Liverpool, but there's really great diagrams that show on that link that literally shows how the DOM is updated on the page when it works in the WebAssembly version versus the server version when it uses SignalR to kind of communicate from the server to the Blazor app. So the docs are really, really good for Blazor is what I've found, even from when it was in like kind of preview. It's been really great to get up to speed with, and you can, if you're already a .NET developer, you can quite quickly transfer the knowledge that you've got over to learning Blazor. So I would recommend looking at those docs and working through the tutorials. And I think Adam mentioned there is a Microsoft Learn module for it as well, so I'd recommend having a look there.
Nice, yeah, awesome. That's cool. There's a few other questions that came in here. I'm just scrolling through. So does Codespaces support only GitHub hosted repos, and does it support Visual Studio or only VS Code? I guess, Chris, maybe that's one for you to answer.
Yeah, good question. So I think at the moment, yeah, the primary support is for GitHub repositories, and you could see, right, the really tight integration that there was there with Codespaces in the browser, being able to edit that. Visual Studio Code, you can access, GitHub Codespaces through Visual Studio Code as well. I haven't tried personally actually with full Visual Studio. That's something I need to go away and try and play with myself. So I'll go and try that one out. But I suppose, devil's advocate, you could go and clone a repository into that Codespace environment if you wanted, but I think you're losing some of the, nice value there that you get at that point. But yeah, I guess there's options there for you.
Nice, awesome. There's a couple of other questions there. There was one around controlling access. I'm just trying to. Is it possible to get Dependerbot statistics for a whole GitHub organization? I'm not entirely sure to the answer to that one. I know you can obviously get them per repo. You can have them funneled to a particular email address, so the alerts go to a central person or email address. I'll have to find out. Ping me on, whoever asked that question, ping me on Twitter at Dean Bryen, and I'll happily find an answer to that one for you. I haven't tried to do that across an organisation. I don't know if you've done that, Chris.
No, and I was just opening up the organisation we had here a moment just to see. I can see, as you say, I can see it on the repository level. Can't see anything on the organisation, so I think that's something for us to take away there.
Awesome. And there's one that's interesting one, actually. We didn't really dive into that too much, around controlling the environment somebody gets when they create a code space, and that is possible. And Chris, you probably know a little bit more around that.
Yeah. I can start, maybe Carole can jump in, given I was off mute. So yeah, there's a couple of files you can add to your GitHub repository. And if you've ever used Visual Studio Code remote containers and that extension, they will look very suspiciously similar. So there is a file, a Docker file, which of course everyone will be familiar with if you've done any Docker work or containers work in the past. And then there's another file, a YAML file, basically representing what the development environment is. So in there, then you define the types of extensions that you'd want VS Code to have. You'd define things like what kind of shell environment you want to use, and a number of different parameters that might feed their way into the Docker file. And that's really the magic behind it, is containers. And I think that's why I love code spaces, is because I don't need to install anything on my machine. Don't need to worry about all of the, does this dependency conflict with this one? It's super nice and easy to get set up with.
Yeah, it should eliminate that famous works on my machine thing, right? It's like everyone's machine should work the same, and if in doubt, head to the browser and see it working in there.
Awesome, good stuff. And then the final question was that I can see here, at least unless there's any more coming in, is can I use this with Azure Devops? So I'm not entirely sure what part of Azure Devops. There's a bunch of products inside Azure Devops. So I guess maybe that question, obviously, Chris, you mentioned in, I'll do my best at answering that. Your section, you mentioned that obviously you could use Azure DevOps instead of GitHub for your repository for your static web app. So you could obviously do your CI process in there. From a repository perspective, I guess if you were using repos in Azure Repos, I don't believe Dependable is available in there, but there are other third-party tools that you can use for checking dependency vulnerabilities that will be available as part of the process in Azure Repos, or so you could check that out, but not Dependable. That's just native to GitHub that you can use there. So hopefully that answers the question. Just looking to see if there's any more questions, and maybe we can wrap up. It doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in. So as we said, there's a number of resources for people to check out. I've enjoyed myself. How about you guys?
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great fun being part of Build and your Build experience. So any questions, hit any of us up on social media. Come and join some of our community events and join our community here in the UK as a buzzing developer and engineer community here. The links are there for you to follow up, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks.